morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Bitcoin and Beyond. I'm your host, Melanie Carstens, and today we are joined by, I love the word NFT archaeologist, podcast host, and I don't know, general crypto Bitcoin extraordinaire. So super honored to have you here today, Adam. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. I appreciate it. NFT archaeologist. I have it in my bio as in a former life, right? I don't know if we can consider the previous cycle of former life, but it's how I really got kind of known a little bit. Well, known in my little circle in crypto was as an NFT archaeologist last cycle, kind of digging up old NFT projects and stuff. That was one of the funnest times of my life, and during COVID, it was the best thing happening. But I actually started in crypto in 2016.
All right, so let's start there, because I'm interested in the whole of Adam, not just the crypto. Let's see where we take this. You said I could take it in any direction, so let's go. Let's talk about Adam. I normally start off asking people who was Adam, or who is Adam before crypto. So let's go back to before you even heard the word Bitcoin.
Sure.
Who's Adam?
Adam was somebody like I did the traditional thing in the States, right? I grew up in Connecticut, did the whole college thing. Everybody went to college. But even when I was in college, I kind of, and this was a long, long time ago, I recognized that it was basically like, this is a scam. There was something always in my life where I was like, this is not, something doesn't make sense here. Especially this idea of working 40 to 60 hours a week for your entire adult life, only to have some vacation at the end of your life when you're old and decrepit. That didn't make sense to me. It especially didn't make sense to me when my dad, who had worked for the same aerospace company his entire life, got laid off, a year before he was going to get his pension, right? And got kind of screwed over by, the man in that case. So that especially didn't make sense to me. That idea was dead to me by the time I graduated college. And I actually went and worked on the Chicago Board of Trade, traditional finance, for about 6 months. But something was like, this is not right. You have to try something else. And I actually, I packed up my 2 bags and bought a one-way ticket to the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean, and was like, I'm going to try and do like a Gilligan's Island lifestyle and try to live off the land, or I don't even know what, but do something different. And that led me to living in the Caribbean. And now I live in Costa Rica. I've been in Costa Rica for a couple of decades, and now I've lived outside of the States longer than I lived in the States. So that's how that kind of arc happened. During that entire time, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always had businesses. I've had businesses since I was 12 years old. And my wife and I have had multiple businesses together. She still has one of the larger soap companies here in Costa Rica.
Yes, I want to hear about that. I read about it when I was snooping around.
So we do that. But even with that, I always try to do things. My brain is always like, for optimization or doing things in a different way. So even with the soaps, as a simple example, we were the first ones to do refillable soaps. So now you go to every Marriott on the planet has refillable bathroom amenities. We were actually one of the first companies in the world to do that. We were far too early. We did it in like 2005, and people were not ready. Even in Costa Rica, which is like this eco destination, people were absolutely not ready. We got incredible pushback. But eventually the market caught up to us, and we were successful. We were just lucky enough to be able to hold on long enough to wait for the market to catch up. So leaning into stuff like that, I'm somewhat of an outlier in that direction, where I'm looking for the new thing. Crypto, always, from the moment I heard about crypto, it made sense to me. Wasn't early enough to get rich, but that's probably okay. And I probably would have blown it all anyway. So probably a good thing. Maybe
so many people actually say that I speak to, that are like, well, it wouldn't matter if I'd bought it then or yesterday, because I'd be probably in the same position.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people like when did you first hear about Bitcoin? I know the exact day. Like I heard about it at $32 because I spoke with my brother about it, who's still actually in like traditional finance. We talked about it at $32. right? That's when I know I talked Bitcoin then. But I really got into crypto during the Ethereum ICO boom because I had actually run like Kickstarter events for other businesses, and this made total sense for me, and still makes sense for me. This idea of raising capital globally to finance either local businesses or any business completely made sense. And like this is the cycle where it's actually like possible. It actually kind of works. It's still basically stuck in this like meme coin thing, but I'm still the idea of crypto rails for finance is just obvious. It's like finally happening.
Very obvious.
It's very obvious, but it was obvious to me back in 2016 when I first started.
I think a lot of people that I speak to, that they have that. When I say to them, what is your Bitcoin moment? What is your Bitcoin story? It's kind of, they have that feeling. It was like, their eyes were open before they even heard about it. It was like, I'm already looking for something, and if you kind of, there's still so many people that almost need to have that moment to go, okay, I see it. And it's probably out of maybe fear of going, okay, well, actually everything I know. And I think specifically, if I look at people in sort of our age group who haven't got involved with it yet, it's almost like a fear, right? It's going, well, I've built my whole life on this thing that's supposed to be real. And, trying to believe it's real on my hamster wheel. My husband and I are the same. We're entrepreneurs. And I remember the first moment I said to my son, what you were saying now, well, people have jobs. I mean, he must have been like, I don't know, 8 or 9, because everybody we know works from home. I was like, no, they have jobs and they've got to have a holiday for a certain amount of time every year, and they get the same amount of money every month, and they have to work till they're 65. And they can't go where they can't do. And he was just like so confused by that fact. So you kind of see the confusion in it, regardless of, it's obviously confusing. You know?
I love that you have, from a kid's perspective, and my kid had a similar perspective. He's old now, but when he was like 6 or 7, and we were actually, for whatever reason, I'll never forget it, because it was kind of like this like funny, like, oh, child recognizes the truth moment, which was like, we were talking about money and taxes for, I don't even know what reason. Right. And, but he was
because
like,
you're an entrepreneur, it comes up.
Well, of course. Right. But he's like, well, why would they take money from people when they can just print more? And I was like, exactly, bro. Exactly.
That's like, yes, that is a slogan for a t-shirt. It's like,
for me though, the idea is like, well, when people will be like, well, it's fake money or it's not real. And I was like, I mean, anybody who's in the space is like, yeah, of course. So is fiat. Nothing's real. It's agreed upon realities that we're dealing with here. And I think that's the thing that really, like, NFTs, especially for me, was this idea of like ownership of digital items on public blockchains, like, just rang true. And I don't think, obviously I don't mean to think, I know the rest of the world does not understand that yet and does not agree with it yet. They still believe that digital items are infinitely digital items are infinitely copyable and nobody can own them. But this is a new paradigm in actually ownership, and the world hasn't caught that yet. And so we're still in this like, well, when NFTs are going to come back? And I'm like, well, we got a lot of convincing to do. Like, the majority of the world, crypto Twitter gets it, but we're like 10,000 people or 20,000 people maybe. So the rest of the world, we have a long way to go to convince them of this.
Yeah. I think that is so interesting because, for me as well, the first time I have a background in music and art, and the first time I heard about NFTs, it was like the most obvious thing to me. It's kind of like, well, you can access a relationship with somebody that before had a big steel gate in front of it. You go on Twitter Spaces and you speak to artists all over the world. It opens that up, and they can speak directly to their customers. But I mean, it's so much bigger than that. The fact that you can that it's this contract that is a proof of ownership between, trust is proof of ownership between people. I love it. And there's certain examples. For example, fine art. There's a collection here in South Africa that was left, some of the finest artists in the country, and the collection wasn't looked after by the government, and it was just left to rack and ruin. And now they have limited proof of these artworks. They have fallen apart. You know what I mean? So those kind of, there's obvious examples. I'm probably not articulating it properly, but I am fascinated by it as well. And I'm fascinated by the NFT archaeologist, the word NFT archaeologist. And I think you said earlier you were too early with the soaps. It's like that as well. This is, you're talking about the future here. You know, and the fact that you're living, it's like living inside the pyramids and then being able to talk about them as well at the same time.
Well, it's like the idea of digital art. It's a really interesting story, the history of early digital art, prior to blockchains. And I have had numerous of these artists on my show, where we've talked about what it was like pre-blockchain. And these guys would literally, like, how do you sell something that's inherently free and copyable? Well, the answer is it's really, really hard to do it. Like, and they were experimenting with ways like, how can I sell ownership? And it usually involved basically two things. One, they would do huge installations with lots of like screens and stuff. And then the collector buying the art would get all of these screens, and the guy would go to his house and like basically install these screens. So there's that way where you're buying like a piece that's larger than just the digital art. It becomes part of like a physical digital combo. Yeah. And the other way was they were basically selling domain names, like URLs, right? Oh. So they would put the art on www.myart.com, and then you as a collector would buy this URL. And in theory, then you could transfer it to somebody else or whatever, right? This was like early versions of how do you own something digitally, right? Yeah. And so obviously blockchain solved that, but it took, I mean, realistically, we had Xcopy, doing digital items in like 2016 and 17 on Bitcoin. Those are basically lost to time, but it really didn't occur until 2021 when these really were like, oh, like the real, like serious collectors were like, oh, this is something here. And obviously the speculation and everything that it allowed or enabled and facilitated, that's like crypto's superpower, the gambling aspect, right? Mm-hmm. But really it was 21 where people woke up to this idea of digital art and digital ownership. It works for digital art because there's no need to trust, a real world artist, or there's no need to trust, there's no trust necessary, right? It's blockchain. So it's one of these things that was just like a perfect use case. And obviously 21 had its moment. And look, there's still stuff. People are like, when are NFTs coming back? I'm like, they're already here, man. Like, yeah. You want to buy a Nakamoto card, it's still $150,000, right? Yeah. To buy a Nakamoto card, right? So it's still here. Are all NFTs going to be super valuable? Obviously not, right? Yeah. But the idea of NFTs is definitely not going anywhere. I mean, it's amazing, right? We're getting stocks are going to be NFTs. It's all happening now, right? This is like the cycle where it's, oh my God, all these dreams from 2014, 13, 12, the birth of Ethereum, all this stuff, which was discussed, is actually happening now. It's just, I mean, I look at it as a miracle. It's a miracle that this didn't get shut down by governments and stopped. But here we are. It's like the freedom money and freedom digital items and freedom everything is right here. So it's quite incredible, actually.
Yeah. Tell me the sort of timeline, because you speak so wisely about, and you have so much knowledge about this journey of NFTs, and leading up to ordinals and then obviously beyond. So let's talk about the sort of early, you mentioned now the work that Xcopy was doing that you said lost to time. And even prior to that, you've got and also there's kind of the stamps and, so let's sort of talk about that story, because it's a deeply interesting, I think, to so many people.
I mean, really, you have to go back. You go back really to the beginning of Bitcoin, right? Yeah. Bitcoin launches, and so Satoshi puts, Chancellor on the brink of bailout in the first block, right? Storing digital items on blockchains has been around literally since the first block, right? Wow. The ability to trade those digital items really happened with Namecoin. It was the first, fork of Bitcoin. That happened in 2011, right? Nice. So basically, this was an idea, and Satoshi even talked about this. Well, how could we decentralize URLs, right? An interesting, I guess at the time, worthy idea. They were worried about, hey, my, Adam McBride.com is going to go down. It's controlled by somebody else. How can we decentralize that? And this was their idea, right? Turned into basically Namecoin. Namecoin, and like what you learn when studying early NFTs and early blockchains is there were all these experiments, and looking back on them through the lens of time, they're almost always broken. And the way they approach things was like, today we would look at it, wow, that was a really bad way of approaching it. And the bad thing about Namecoin, looking back on it historically, is that they expired. So basically they took the model of current URLs, which I buy google.com. It actually has an expiration date, right? Google's extended that expiration date for 1,000 years, but they actually expire. And what Namecoin did was like, hey, every 6 months or every 100,000 blocks, these expire, and you were required to renew them. And that's just not. We know now that that's not what people want. People want things that never expire, right? They want permanence on blockchains. So those are some of the first ones that people actually experimented around with little pieces of art. They would do ASIC art and ASCII art and all that sort of stuff. So that was like the super early. Then you get into stuff like what I was talking about on Bitcoin. That was done through like an ascribe protocol, which is now defunct, and kind of all that artwork has been lost. And there are people trying to like bring it back, but it's really difficult. If somebody can bring that back, obviously you're going to get some early X copies, and it would be magical. But those were ones actually inscribed on Bitcoin.
How did they get lost? Sorry.
It was basically like stored on a centralized database. So there are all these like experiments, right? So ascribe was this.
So they were still building it. Those are the early foundations and the early, not mistakes, but the early.
They're experiments, right? Yeah. How do we put, Trent McConaughey, who I've had on my show, who built Ascribe, was like, well, how do I put digital art on blockchains, right? And so they were trying to figure it out. Well, okay, well, you have the image here, but it's tied to a hash on the chain here on Bitcoin. There's and so these were the experiments, right? And faulty as they were, these are their early experiments. And then, I mean, the first one that really kind of hit was Counterparty, right? So Counterparty happened, where we get Spells of Genesis, really the first kind of like game on the blockchain, fully flushed out kind of game. Then of course you get Rare Pepes. And so Rare Pepes are this community-led art project that has it's the deepest collection you'll ever experience. It's over 1,700 cards. It's incredibly complex, but we all know about the Nakamoto card, right? So the first card, which had 300 issuances, we all know that card, right? And so that was the one. I mean, most people who are kind of look at the history of NFTs look at Rare Pepe as this like inflection moment where it was like some artists recognized that, hey, it's possible for us here. Things can be done here. And it's got this weight to it, in the same way that like a CryptoPunk would have weight to it. It was just like an inflection point where, yes, there were ones before, and of course there have been thousands after, but this was like a really important one. And so that one for Rare Pepes was super important. And then you get the birth of Ethereum, and the birth of Ethereum more fully allowed, buying and selling and individual NFTs much more than previous, which were like more of like series. So the Nakamoto card, it's the same image, but there are 300 tokens associated with it, right? ETH really allowed, or Ethereum really allowed, this kind of one-of-one technology, which most people don't realize literally took until 2018 to fully flush out. Like, there were obviously a lot of NFTs prior to that, but they were all kind of using basically a fungible token standard to try and create a non-fungible token. Even CryptoPunks themselves. And so there's this like rich history. But then in 2018, you get the full explosion. CryptoKitties happens at the end of 2017. Everybody's like, holy cow, Dapper Labs is making money. I want to make money. And literally every dev on earth, or certainly everybody who is in crypto, was like, I want to do that. And so you get this arc of explosion through 2018, which is like 1,000 maybe projects. And then into 2021, when we literally have millions of NFT projects, right? So that's the kind of very, very quick history of NFTs, if you will.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. And then we move to, so that's kind of, and I think a lot of people really only come into that story in that sort of boom during COVID where kind of everybody was online, that's kind of brought everybody into it. And it feels like that is unless you go deeper, that is kind of the story. People think that's where it started, you know.
So in my experience in crypto, everything is driven by hype, right? And so even with Counterparty and Rare Pepes back in the day, the reason it created this like vibrant community, and I say vibrant, it's, you know, maybe 50 people who were going on back then, but those 50 people got really excited, right? And what we learn is that a couple of guys who get really excited can literally change the world. I mean, that's just period, full stop. That's the way it works. And so like in 2017, when CryptoKitties happened, like that was exciting to people, and people got extremely like, oh my God. So we had that little bump, but the real mainstreaming moment didn't happen till, you know, 2021. Basically, we had Top Shot happen in late 2020. That brought a lot of money in. People made a ton of money on Top Shot. And that money kind of fueled, they found out about CryptoPunks, right? And that fueled the CryptoPunks run, and CryptoPunks to Beeple to Bored Apes to it just ramped up, right? And then hundreds of projects got launched, and then thousands, and then it kind of all crashed, of course. But that's the way it works. And so in that sort of way, people would say like, well, ordinals happen and look, it's crashed, it's nothing. It's like, no, that's the foundation. Because like what ordinals did was ordinals triggered building on Bitcoin again. Like people don't recognize there was no building on Bitcoin happening before Casey launched ordinals, right? It brought building, it brought wallets. I have great, you know, Bitcoin wallets now. There's great infrastructure. There's 1,000 L2s, right? All these meta protocols, right? So that hype triggered building, which that building will enable whatever the next hype may be. That's my view on the way these things work.
Yeah. That's another one of those moments, isn't it? That we're sort of living through, that is going to be, people are going to look back at those early days. I mean, it's another moment where people are going to remember when they first heard about Bitcoin Ordinals. You know, I remember that moment so clearly. I was like, I couldn't wait. I was just DMing everybody I knew going, oh my God, have you heard? Have you heard? And the moment I could, and I recall, because prior to that, I was minting for a couple of artists. I'm not an artist, I represent. And I was like, guys, listen, we've got to get your work onto Ordinals. I don't know what I'm doing with my Sparrow wallet, and I don't know actually what's going on. But I've still got Ordinals sitting in Sparrow wallets because I'm too scared. I open them up, I know, and I look at them and I'm like, I know I need to take them out, but I'm too scared that they're just sitting there, right? I'm here.
Totally. I mean, people are, you know, I don't know if you know, but you know, I used to do a show with Leonidas and Jake, my current partner at Emblem Vault. You know, we did hundreds of shows with Leo, right? And one of them, you know, was basically this September, so 6 months before, you know, Ordinals launch. We had Casey on the show to talk about Ordinals, right?
Wow.
So I knew Ordinals was coming. My story with Ordinals is I knew it was coming, and wanted to do it. But I was trying to use my old machine to get like the Bitcoin node running, and had it up, and I never was able to get it running. And this is the great thing, right? So I just trying to get it running before they launched at the end of the day.
I don't get a node. I'm laughing.
Literally inside the with Casey and like Raph, and I'm like, I can't get it running. Can't get deep. You know, Casey, I'm like sharing my screen. He's trying to get it running with me. Anyway, it's like going to launch, and I think it was Raph was like, hey man, just give me a couple of them that you want, and I'll you know, inscribe them for you. And I was like, nah, don't worry about it. I could have had like a top 10 ordinal, but I was too stupid to like just have him send the picture to Raph to inscribe it. You know,
well,
so
that's
anyway.
the thing. I heard at 2000, and I remember that I was like, okay, how do I do it? And I remember inscribing them, and it was like $10 to put on like this incredible piece of, you know, like a nice piece of artwork. And I remember it got to $20 when the sats per VBAT, they were going up and up, you know, as people.
Nobody's
and I was like, that is so fucking expensive. Back to Ethereum gas prices. This is ridiculous. I'm not doing it anymore. And I stopped.
Yeah.
I was just like, and then I suddenly, again, it must have been a couple of months later, tried to inscribe a piece of artwork, and it was like $6,000. I was like, what? Yeah. You know, in that, when it peaked at like, I think it was 150 Satsuki V-Bucks.
Yeah,
Sort of,
yeah.
yeah.
It's funny, those stories. I mean, this is what creates like the lore and the culture, right? And this is actually what connects you to ordinals deeply, right? I think people miss the emotional aspect of art and stuff. And these stories connect people to the projects. I have one from early. I mean, I have this one with ordinals. Obviously, this like deep connection to ordinals, which will never go away, right? Even though I don't have any early ordinals. But like on ETH, when I was
on-chain monkey, that's good enough. I think.
I'm on-chain monkey. Look, at the end of the day, you're part of the the lore and the history, right? And on early, actually, really at the start of what became known as like historical NFTs were these rediscoveries, and there was this like one magical week where like 4 rediscoveries happened. And the second one to happen was called Mooncats, which you may see on the timeline from time to time, Mooncats. But this happened, and I was one of the first people to see this post. And I went, much like you, I went on with ordinals. I went on, and it was like the gas fee was like $50 to mint these. And I literally put out on Twitter, I was like, $50, worth it, you know? And I mean, of course, the things ran to like 2 ETH that first, that first day or whatever. But this is what you learn, right? And that day I learned a lot. Like I learned, I mean, that was the day I learned about like raising your gas fee. So that launch day, and I made a YouTube video about it and stuff because it was such a crazy and important day for me, because it created this like excitement that nothing in crypto had ever done before. And but I thought I had bought like 50 cats at the time. I thought I had minted 50 pet cats. What I didn't realize was I was just hitting mint in my MetaMask or whatever, or confirm in my MetaMask, while everybody else was doing like max gas fees. So I got front run. Like I only got like 4 cats right on that day, and it still spent like $2,000 in gas for cats that I didn't get. Right? It's like, hello Ethereum, So yeah, you get these stories, but of course now I'm deeply tied to Mooncats, even though I might not have like a huge bag of them or whatever. The story behind it, and the day of me and my 7-year-old son or whatever trying to mint Mooncats is like this legendary thing in our family lore and stuff. So it becomes fun.
Yeah, and isn't that really what it's all about? You mentioned earlier where you said, it's a collective of people that have to kind of almost have this belief in something for it to become real.
100%.
That's what money is, isn't it? It's the fact that it's really just a piece of paper with a picture on it.
The moment we stop believing in it, it's over. Like it could happen at any time. Yeah.
And we all know that that's kind of, people are starting to wake up, especially the younger generations who are going, hang on, there's that story that you deeply felt as a young person through, I think, social media and the proliferation of information and the freedom of information, where we were told, head down, work hard. My brother's day, it was like you can either become a doctor, an accountant, or a lawyer. All other jobs sucked. That was your option. You sign up for life, or you work in a car dealership and you wait for your pension. Those are the kind of things people did. So I think the ability or the information that children have right now, and the freedom of being online is enabling that dream of ours.
Right. 100%. The only issue with it, to give my kind of personal perspective on it, is there's quite a bit of when you have like very little options, right? And your life is sort of laid out for you. In my general feeling is that creates a happier human. Sadly, right? To a degree.
Very true.
Is that when you know exactly what you're going to do, you're not questioning yourself. And I think we see that with, suicide rates and all these kind of depression and stuff like that. And I would say, like, I've lived through these experiences enough. For example, we sold a business when I was in my kind of early 30s and was able to like basically semi-retire. That time for me bumped me up against this, like, well, what do you do when when you don't have the daily grind or you don't have direction? Because for a lot of people, this retirement idea is like the dream. But living in Costa Rica, and I used to live at the beach here, you see it all the time, especially with men. And I speak specifically to men. When you become, 65 years old and you retire and you've worked 40 years at the same job or at a job, and you suddenly have nothing to do, existential crisis usually hits at about the 6-month mark. And a lot of people just turn to drinking, they get divorced, all sorts of terrible things happen because you're bumped up against this reality of like, what's my purpose here? And, you know, if my purpose isn't my job and I'm not tying my identity to my job anymore, what am I? And, you know, the reality is in the olden days, and I'm talking, you know, older 50 years ago, like that, so few people got to experience that. So few people were rich enough or had the leisure time or whatever to experience that. And typically we hear stories, you know, people would go climb Mount Everest or sail around the globe or something to challenge themselves. But today it's like every fifth person you meet, at least in the West, is having this crisis, and we're not prepared. We've lost, you know, the spiritual aspect of life to a large degree. Religion's basically dead. And so you're forced to kind of fill it with scrolling on your phone or drugs or video games or something like this. And, you know, most people don't have the ability to deal with it. But I do think at the same time, social media, there are people out there talking about it and giving people, you know, purpose and stuff. And, but it's a significant challenge. I'm not discounting. It's one of the biggest challenges I've ever faced in my life, was this challenge of not having to do anything and facing yourself in the mirror. It's tough. It's really, really hard.
Don't you think that's because, and this has kind of been my thesis, is that creativity is kind of suppressed in people. And that's one of the reasons I love the idea of attaching the way we're attaching creativity to money. In going, you know, through with Bitcoin, with Ordinals, you've kind of got this very strong, it's either DeFi or NFTs, you know, Bitcoin and Ordinals, they kind of sit together beautifully, where I think in real life, certainly from, you know, sort of where I come from, and I even look at schools today, creativity isn't prioritized. And I think that if you at least are able to, you know, when you do retire, because that's what happens, people retire and then they die because, like you say, there's nothing. What do I do? Who am I? You know, and I think
my only thing there is I think because you're a creative, you're an entrepreneur, which requires creativity. And obviously I'm a creative as well, but I think we lose the perspective, because we deal with artists and other creative people, that a lot of people actually don't have much creativity. And it's just kind of the way it is. You see it in people. I see it in some people where I'm stunned by the lack of creativity.
But surely if we educated them and we said, you are creative, and that the fact that I believe, listen, I might be that hopeless, sad person that is like, I do that. I do shows and I'm like, guys, we are all creative.
Yeah.
We are all creators. Go outside, take your phone and take a picture of the first thing you see. Come inside, download an app and play around with the color. There we go. You're a photographer. That's as easy as that. Go in your kitchen, throw some ingredients, ask ChatGPT, take a photograph of what's in your cupboard, ask ChatGPT what you can make. It'll tell you a menu and all the instructions. You're a creator.
I would say that, maybe let me reframe. I think you're right with young children. I think it's actually driven out of us in a lot of ways by schooling and structure, which we could talk about forever. But I definitely think you're right there. I think, but by the end of the, you know, by the time they're 60 and I'm interacting with them, there may be a spark left. And I think you see people who kind of bloom in their retirement, is they're actually able to tap into that spark, which you're talking about. But yeah, for a lot of people, that spark has been almost completely extinguished.
But I mean, what do you think? You sort of turn on the TV and it's like, well, everybody hates each other. The politicians hate each other. Everybody hates each other. They're all fighting. You know, you open up your social media. I sometimes get a fright because I have to do social media for my husband. And I open up anything but my crypto Twitter because I'm not on any other social media. And I'm like, why are they hurting the animals? You know, why? Because it's just like, it shows the ugly side of people. And you think, well, if you're brainwashed with that information all the time and that you have to run around and exchange pieces of paper to get anything, you know, And I just think that's weird. And I think that if we were inspired more at school, and like you said, we could talk about this forever, just as how uninspired children. My son is an artist, and we have to send him to art school outside of art.
Yeah, 100%.
Because there's no art.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I was actually having a conversation the other day where I was talking about, like, up until very recently, at least in the US, you couldn't even talk about schools and teacher unions and how bad it was. It was basically off the table. It was untouchable. Teachers are basically angels. The teachers unions are nothing but good. We're finally having that discussion because, I mean, like, when I was growing up, I knew school sucked. Like, it sucked. It was stupid. Like, and somehow, like, I'm talking to adults and they're talking about it like this is some great thing. I'm like, do you remember school? School was fucking terrible.
What's a cumulonimbus cloud? I literally remember cumulonimbus cloud, and I still don't know what it is.
It's so stupid. I mean, realistically now, my kids now graduated, but I'd probably homeschool now because I just don't even think, like, I look at it as glorified babysitting for the vast majority of people, and it kills the creativity, obviously. And the reality is, I think it doesn't set kids up for success anymore. Like, almost universally, it sets a certain sliver of kids up for success. And everybody else, it's kind of just you're going there because both parents need to work, and unfortunately, that's what we've boxed ourselves into a little bit. And I'm not saying there's like an easy solution because none of this stuff is easy. But at least we're finally talking about it. Like, oh my God, wait, maybe we need to change some of this stuff. Maybe this is not the way forward. I hear, up until a year ago, every school in the country, at least in the States, was like, you're not allowed to use ChatGPT, no AI allowed. But now I'm just seeing stuff like, oh no, okay, these charter schools are like, no, AI is integrated into everything. It's going to free up the kids, free up the teachers. We're going to get creative. We're going to have sports. We're going to have, whatever, anything to break this model. And I think
that is beautiful words. That is exactly anything. At this point, it's like, break something, it's fine.
Yeah.
We are people, we can fix it. But let's just break it because it's not working and you can't keep putting band-aids on it. Yeah. Because it's over, to me at least. So I am as well. I'm excited. I teach my son. I said to him a couple of years ago, listen, there's this thing, and I remember at the time he was like, "I'm not doing that. That's cheating." I'm like, "No, you got to understand. There's ways to use it." 100%. This child now codes games, and he taught himself to code using ChatGPT. Sure. It was broken at the time, so you couldn't. We would laugh, like, build a car, please give me the code to make a car. And then the car would be like this block with the wheels, and then you'd press go forward, and the block would move forward, and the wheels would just fall. I mean, so he would have to go back and kind of start checking it, and so that actually taught him something. And that's when the lights really came on for me. Because hang on a minute, this can teach my son better. And, it was harder for him, but using YouTube, that's where it all started to me. YouTube is really people giving all that information for free. Now you can just get by asking whatever you want to call mine's called Evie. So in this house, we say, ask Evie.
My kid, I guess he was in school for the last 18 months, where they were like, no, GPT allowed. And I was like, it's allowed. You're allowed in this house. Like, they may not allow it when you're in school, fine. But the moment you get home, you're required to use this. This is not non-negotiable. Yeah.
No, who's going to take, there's that saying that I keep repeating to people, AI is not going to take your job. It's going to take the job of the person who doesn't know how to use AI. Yep. This is now saying, it's like saying the camera killed art. Yeah, right. Excel killed accounting. Totally. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah, we've run those games before, and the doom and gloom never happens.
Except for the postal service. Except for the postal service, they're a bit fucked.
Totally, that's true.
Yeah, but There's a couple, and the poor carriage. So
Well, it's still nice to use a carriage. You know, you take a carriage ride in Central Park. That's still nice.
exactly, and the horses are free, so the horses are thrilled about the whole story.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway,
it's funny. I like even all that stuff, even in the art sector, like, you know, and we've run this a couple times with in the art. It's like, well, you know, digital art isn't art. You know, photography is not art. I mean, yeah, you know, digital music isn't art. Pushing a button on a synthesizer isn't real music. Rap's not real music. Like, you live long enough, you see patterns
story.
where people disregard the future
Mhm,
and they get left behind. I mean, look, you know, we're fortunate enough to be in a position and to realize that we see the future.
mhm.
The majority of people don't, and that allows us to be early to the future. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Let's talk about the future then. Okay, so I'll start with my first purchase of digital land.
Okay, yeah.
I was going to build. I bought a piece of land in the sandbox, and
Okay.
I was going to build a high-rise building and rent out office space because I was like, "Where is your avatar going to have his business meetings, and what art is going to be on his walls?" So, but let's talk about that. Let's talk
Yeah.
about how you see, I think, kind of this playing out as it goes forward and as we move further and further into this digital world. What is it going to look like? Is this, I mean, it's a very open question because there's a lot of questions I want to ask inside that.
Yeah.
But as we move further and further, I think, into the art side of things, and that idea, exactly like I said, you can buy a piece of land and you can build something in this digital space. Let's talk about maybe living in that digital space. What does that look like, maybe?
We're looking at it right here. We're living in the digital space right here. Uh, we don't need to dream about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a piece of metaverse land. We're
Yeah.
literally living in the digital metaverse right now.
Yeah.
X or YouTube or whatever you're using is the digital metaverse.
Mm.
Will it be more rich, and is it possible the glasses happen and all this sort of stuff? Sure. But I think at the end of the day, we're already living in a metaverse. You know, I don't even look at my hours on my phone anymore because it's infinite. I live in a digital metaverse more hours than I don't.
Mm.
And so, you know, it's already here. Uh, Ownership and the way that all works, that still needs to play out. You know, will it be digital land? I don't know. Maybe if it's
Where
attractive.
are our robots? We were saying the other day, where are our robots going to go? Where are they going to go in their dream? Come on, surely maybe my bunny rabbit katana holding robot when they go shopping. I mean, there are going to be times, right? This is the early stage of, like you say, exactly, we are living in it, but it's going to become, I guess, richer and deeper because we might be sitting here with just our heads on a screen, whereas maybe in the future we're sitting in a room together and people can actually come into that room and not just watch it online alone in their computer. Like our avatars, pretty much like playing Fortnite, but us just being. Is that something that you think it's going
I
to look like?
I
Or
think what you mentioning Fortnite is a really interesting point. And I think in relation to blockchains and Bitcoin and everything, that's really where the inflection is. So if you
Mhm,
look at what Fortnite is, which is a you know, game controlled by an entity, a centralized entity, owns everything there, right? And you can buy it, right? My kid spent thousands on
on
Fortnite,
skins. Yeah,
right? But he doesn't actually own those skins,
I
and we
know.
all know that. If
Mhm.
you act inappropriately in the game or you do something that they don't
Yeah,
like, they take those skins from you, and
yes,
he's had plenty of friends who've lost skins that way, right?
yes.
So the right now, the question is, especially in gaming is like this one that
Huge.
once it's cracked, I think it's all cracked. Because
Mhm.
once humans decide and gamers decide that we don't want Epic Games owning these digital items anymore, we want to own them ourselves, then it's all over. And I think that for me at least, I'm waiting for one big game developer. The great one would be GTA. One of these big developers to say, you own the skins now. You own the in-game items now, and they're held by you. And once that happens, that's really, for me, I'm looking for that. When that happens, that's like the tipping point for digital ownership. Because that's when my kid, who already understands digital ownership because he knows me and we talk about it all the time, that's when the wave happens. That's when like the tsunami happens, and it becomes like every digital ownership, personal digital ownership on public blockchains is the future. We haven't hit that point yet. And so, right now, I'll just give you like the little alpha on what we're doing. We're buying Fortnite skins through shady mechanisms of, people are basically selling the, Gmails that are holding the Fortnite skins, right?
Wow.
So it's a shady dealings. Like, I've lost so much money sending money to PayPal, and then you get rugged because it was a scammer. But we actually own thousands of old skins through people's, like, we own basically the login to Fortnite and own these old Fortnite skins, right? So, will they ever become NFTs, and will we ever truly own them? I don't know, but I'm making this like bet that it will, right? In a way, like, that's just kind of like the way this is the battle that I see. It's big companies owning your digital items, or public blockchains owning your digital items. And that's still to be determined. Like, it might not happen. There's a risk that never happens, but my money is on humans want that to happen, and it eventually will.
Yeah, I mean, I play Fortnite with my son, and we've sort of had this conversation many times. It's like, you're buying these things, and I think it's also because I come from the music industry and those old record label contracts where they don't own their music.
100%.
It's this bizarre thought that my husband can't leave in his will the music that he wrote to our son.
Yep.
It's where, after my husband dies, the label has it.
Yep.
And I think it's the same thing I think about all the time with my skins, the skins my son, and I've said to him, you buy, these are early NFTs. These are the things that one day, like you say, when that one massive, whether it's GTA, whether it's Fortnite, when somebody says, hang on a minute, you can own your skin, you can own your space in your game, your house, or whatever it is you want to own in your game. No other game is going to be able to, they're all going to have to do it. That's going to be that, like you say, that tipping point. And I think exactly that is how, that is the real entry point. I've always also said it might be music, because I've watched music go through so many phases. And I don't think there's one other thing that I can think of that's been produced, consumed, marketed, created more at such a rapid rate through time than music.
It's a tough one, though, and I'll give you my little perspective on it, because I actually, in 21, I was part of a company where we were trying to do this idea of music NFTs and how's it for the future. So I have some experience with music. Music's the tough one, though, really, really tough, because the value of music is the ability to collect royalties and copyright and all this sort of stuff, right? You're collecting from Spotify or radio stations or whatever. So there's like this infrastructure built in that obviously the people who own the infrastructure now don't want to go away, right? So it's very difficult. It's just, I don't know if music NFTs, like, it feels like it could happen, and music ownership moving on blockchains, like, it may happen, but it's just, there's so much institutional friction for it to happen. You know what I'm saying? And these old rails, which are really hard to, if not impossible, to bypass.
They're the first. I mean, Columbia was the first label, and it's still one of the biggest labels. 108 years later, it's like bizarre thought.
Nothing
and
lasts that long, right? Nothing.
No,
there are like 3 businesses on Earth that have lasted that long, right?
So that just shows how kind of artists pay for their rights to be heard with the rights to their music. And it's a travesty. And I think the real way here is switching it on the other side and saying to these sort of youth buyers, these youth creators, that, I don't think catalog is ever going to be freed. That's fucked. That is stuck in a in a system that you just can't ever get it out of.
Yep.
But I think, I chatted to, there's a group called Fountain FM, and I haven't seen anybody yet crack it like they have cracked it, because they can issue ISRC codes, they can issue that, they can aggregate that music everywhere. And I think once you start being able to give the artists that control, because publishing is a shit show.
That's right. Yep.
It's a global shit show. How do you, and even the guys who, they issue ISRC codes, but I actually don't even think that, how do they even, it takes 6 months to pay your royalties. How do they actually control what's going out there? But anyway.
No, I think to that point, this is the opportunity. So if any builders are listening, the opportunity is, the reason why crypto works is that it's actually better, right? And the thing is, it's just nothing's been built which is significantly better. But you see it now, it's happening now. Stocks are coming on chain. The reason why is because it's going to be a better system. It's going to be more fluid, more liquid, 24/7. It's going to be a better system. Yeah. And I think that's the superpower of crypto, which we kind of forget about, because we're bumping up against trying to beat these old systems. But the reality is once it actually happens, it'll be obvious. And, why should royalties take 6 months to be distributed? It shouldn't. Right. And so I think it just requires, and this is where it can take, years and decades to build out. But when it does get built out, it'll be obvious in hindsight. Right.
And it's going to be, it's like that, slowly, and then all at once.
Exactly.
We're in the slowly part.
100%.
But I think, to me, gaming and music, it's going to be artists who tell the story. Not the finance guys, and it's artists. When we look back and we see what happened here, those are the stories that people are going to tell, and that's the records that we're going to have. These beautiful things that you were just talking about now, so rich in history, and it's to me magical how this holds the story together.
Yep.
All right, let's talk.
I would say just to type in for the artists there. If we have any artists listening or like, well, how do I make money with NFTs and stuff? I'd say don't look at it that way. Because look, let's be real. Most artists don't make any money. In traditional art world, like 99.999% artists make zero money, right?
That's why this is fantastic. They don't care if they're not going to make money in the beginning, because they don't make money anyway.
Right. If you approach it, and I actually just read a story today from Coldy, who I've had on my show and talked to a lot. He's a good guy. And he was telling a story of, actually, he was in Sandbox years ago. It was like 2018 or 19 or 20. And, so there were some artists there where he bought a bunch of the guy's art, and it was at like $1 or this is the type of thing that I would encourage artists to do. This is the way you create these connections and these stories with people. And now this guy's art sells for thousands of dollars. And there are literally hundreds of these stories. Like, you can buy that first X copies were 50 cents, right? Where just approach it that way. Approach it as you're gathering collectors, and NFTs become this fantastic way of gathering your collectors. And if you approach it that way, where you're not worried about money and you're not, this is the way to do it. And I think there's still tremendous opportunities for digital artists to come into this space and start curating their collectors.
Look, I know you've got a hard stop in a couple of minutes. So I think I just want to kind of talk about what you are building as well, because you are playing an extremely important part in this magical thing that's happening around us. So let's sort of talk about that. There's a couple of things, like you say, you're a serial entrepreneur, so there's a lot of things that we're going to have to fit into a very small time, space. But it's kind of the things that I know about are Emblem Vault, and then Migrate and Agent Hustle. So,
I mean, the high level view of what it is, and I was very fortunate to hook up with Shannon, who's our kind of genius developer founder, who's been working on this since 2016. Is that what we do? Is we move assets around blockchains. That's the core. That's what Emblem Vault is, and our technology allows assets to stay on their native chain, yet trade on every chain. And that's the technology we're building out. Everything else built on top of that, whether it's Migrate.fun, which allows you to take, meme coin projects that are on maybe, Pump Fund liquidity pool and move it to a liquidity pool on Bonk Fund or whatever. Or Agent Hustle, which is like an intelligence layer, which allows people to just interface in a chat GPT style way of managing their digital assets. All of these things are basically building to this point in the future where there will be hundreds of blockchains. I'm convinced of this. I have zero question. It's not going to be just Bitcoin. There are going to be hundreds of blockchains. And how do all these digital assets move across these blockchains or are managed across these blockchains? I think at the core, they're going to be managed by AI or AI agents to some degree, because even if you yourself, you probably have 50 wallets. I don't even know where my wallets are. They're on.
No, I don't want. Please don't even say that, because I have a panic attack.
No idea. It's on pieces of paper everywhere, right? So in the future, I'm convinced AI is the way people are going to manage their portfolio of digital assets. So we're building for that. But then the infrastructure layer, what we're building is this way for digital assets to move across all blockchains and be controlled across all blockchains. And so, that's what I'm super excited about it, obviously, because I see the future. And, we were joking the other day, like, when do we think that, AI agents will really make a hit and be able to, when will the average person in the world use an AI agent to manage their digital assets? Bro, it might be 10 years. It might be 20 years. I don't know. But I know that it will happen. Right. And so that's what we're building. I mean, really, Agent Hustle is really this idea, because we they call it chain abstraction. We abstract away this idea where you can log in through X or Google or your social login, and you literally then have a wallet on every blockchain on Earth. Right. And the ability for that agent to, I don't know, a meme coin's popping on Cardano, and you say, hey, use a bit of my Bitcoin and buy that meme coin on Cardano, and the agent takes care of the bridging, takes care of the buying, and then you just own that digital asset. I couldn't be more convinced that that's the future. I think the idea of 1,000 different wallets is dead. It's all going to be hidden behind a kind of chat layer, which people are already comfortable with. Your kid's comfortable with. My kid uses every day, right? The world is already comfortable with that. I think that's the way digital assets are going to be maintained in the future. And we're building it. We're super early, right? There's really a handful of agents, bankers, like the top one. I'd put ourselves and a bunch of others in this kind of next level down. But that's just, it's going to be the future. And so I'm just excited to be here at the kind of forefront building for it.
Yeah, that is true. And it's, it's like, we don't know how television works in the back end. We've just got Netflix, and I think that's where we're going. We want to take a remote control, the AI agent, point it at the television, DeFi, NFTs, and we want it to happen.
100%.
Dilly-dallying with your hundreds of wallets. At one point I had 62 different wallets from Wax. I don't remember Wax. I don't even know how that works.
I still got a bunch of Wax NFTs, 100%.
Yeah. I don't even know how to. I open that thing and I'm just like, I don't even know what's going on. Okay, so it's just there for one day when my son, I just had him. I've got one of my phones. I just put it down and I was like, I can't even look at that anymore. I get anxiety because there's too many wallets on there. I don't even know how. My dog literally ate my password book. So I just said to him, that's for you. One day, take this phone, keep it somewhere safe, and one day give it to Adam, the NFT archaeologist.
I tell the idea, and this never made sense to me. We were never, ever, ever going to onboard the world with seed phrases and steel plates. That was never going to happen, right? And for the first time, when we figured out the AI agents and how to hook wallets into them and stuff, that's the first time I said to myself, oh, this is how we're going to onboard the world. And I don't think we're ready to onboard the world of crypto, because most people don't want to trade meme coins and do all this sort of stuff. But the technology that we're building out now will enable it. I'm convinced.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, it's a beautiful note to end, because that is exactly it. And that's why we're here, because it's Bitcoin and it's beyond. It's everything. It's exactly like you say. We've all got that Bitcoin moment. Bitcoin is where it started. But the idea as well, you can have a wallet anywhere. It's just like you can have a dollar, you can have a rand, you can have there isn't only the dollar. People, so that's where it's going. But I love it. Let's end on that note. Adam, it was super cool to have you here. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody watching learns a lot. I could do this for hours with you, and hopefully we can do it again. But
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so
Yeah,
very
thank
much.
you.
Yeah, very cool. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'm Melanie Carstens. I've been chatting to Adam McBride. Go and have a look at Emblem Vault. Go and have a look at Migrate.fun. Go and have a look at Agent Hustle AI.
AgentHustle.ai. You can go use it today for free. It's amazing. Actually, it is amazing. And if you do it now, you can do it on Solana. It's amazing. Like if you're a meme coiner, right? He'll help you pick meme coins like way better than you could ever do it, yourself. And it is amazing. We have people using it every day for, in the trenches. So yeah, he's still free to use.
It's funny on that note, before we go, and I buy a lot of Bitcoin Ordinals, right? I've been buying from the beginning, and I try and spot. I've got favorites. I love Harto. I love Far. I love the Sense collection. Those are kind of my favorite. I love them because I think they're low lying at the moment,
Well, when we come to Bitcoin, and this is we have a lot of Bitcoiners who are excited to have Hustle on Bitcoin, because what he can do is he can watch the market for you, and then you don't need to actually interact with him. So you could just say, hey, when my puppet hits here, sell, and then buy the market floor of, Bitcoin frogs, buy me 3 Bitcoin frogs, right? He can do that sort of stuff. And so he can play the slow trading game too.
And he'll probably argue with you and say, hang on a minute, I'm not getting you 3 Bitcoin frogs. Actually, I'm getting you, because I've been arguing with my GPT now. I took photographs. Harto's got this new collection. I don't know if you've seen it, where he took the 21 seed phrases. I mean, the 4,080 whatever Bitcoin, the words that make up the seed phrases, and he drew an image with each of them and then released this collection, which I love, right? So now I wanted to get another one. So here I am sitting, taking screen grabs of all the things up until the price point I want to buy it. And I'm like, right, break this down for me, because I'm trying to see how I can use it. And basically that's what Agent Hustle AI is doing for you. You don't have to be sitting screen grabbing my art. So I'm first in line for using that for buying my art. It's my curator. Evie's also now my curator. Anyway, be that grace. Thank you so much anyway for everybody for joining. I love it. Thank you very much to Deorganized Media, Piece of Music, and Bitcoin Live DB for making this all happen. If you do enjoy the show, please support independent Bitcoin media. Link in my bio if you want to find out more. And yeah, this is not financial advice. This is not art advice. We just here. It is. That's right. Anyway, thank you very much. Take care. Have a lovely day further. Bye.